Do your mixes sound like this? When they should sound like this? My name's Stuart. Welcome to the second episode of Home Studio Diary, where I'll be taking you through the mixing process of Conjuring the Mechanized Gods. Every good recording starts with drums, so let's start there. Got my drum bus soloed at the moment. Notice that kick is very snappy. I'll tell you how we get that. I'm running MTPower Drumkit 2 on my drum master channel, which is just plugin itself with a MIDI file controlling it, and that's routed to 8 different individual tracks for each section of the kit. So here's that kick soloed. Now you'll notice it's not very fat and expressive, very much just the punch of the kick, and that's because of the speed that it's playing at. I wanted to get rid of a lot of that low end. Here's the kick dry. And by no means is that a bad sound, but we've put a compressor on. This is the Reaper default compressor with the stock death metal kick preset. Tightens it up a tiny bit, and then I've got some saturation with Behringer. All of these plugins are free, by the way, and this is only very light. It's barely even perceptible. And an EQ cutting out a bit of around 400 Hertz, boosting at 50, 3K, and about 7K. That's tightening everything up. Then I've got that running into another EQ where we're doing a high pass at 150, very drastic cut at 300-ish Hertz, another slight cut at 640, and a very slight boost at about 6K. So that's where all the punch is coming from. And then we've got just a snappy reverb here. Just to give it a bit of room sound. No good kick exists without a good snare. You'll notice I'm using a lot of the same plugins across the board. The dry snare on its own. It doesn't sound bad, but it could be better. So we're using the modern rock snare preset. Which makes it a lot quieter, but it makes it very even. Then we've got Behringer again. This is set a lot more drastically than on the kick. And an EQ. This is the basic 11-band rock snare preset. Got a boost at 200, bit of a cut at about 800, boost at 3K, and another boost at 7K. Gives us this. A lot of what I'm doing here is tightening up the VST drums and just making them sound real. And again, we've got reverb. This is the snare subtle touch of life preset. That's about the smallest room size you get. That's how we've brought the snare to life. Okay, I guess we're working on the crash next. Fairly simple. We've got an EQ drastically cutting 200, a low shelf at 400, little boost at 10K, and another boost at 15. Dry. Add EQ. Then we're doing just a preset overhead compressor. Doing much, but it helps. And the cymbal softener reverb. This is going for a big room size just to emulate overheads. Onto hats. Here's our dry sound. EQ, and again, this is the exact EQ that was used for Crash. Then we're running the Melder Production M Saturator. Attack Overheads compressor. And the same cymbal softener reverb. Context of the kick and snare. That left crash as well. That is the exact same chain as the left. Again, that's to simulate overheads. Ride, we're running exactly the same as the hi-hats. Okay, we've got our ride soloed. Adding that EQ. The saturator, and that is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Our attack overheads compressor. And that room reverb. Okay, on the toms, we've simply got the overhead compressor and snare trap reverb. Here's the toms dry with the compressor and with the reverb. Room sizes set a little bit smaller. This was all done using my ears to find what sounded the most real. Context. And again, in context, that sounds like this. Now on the drum bus itself, we've got the ADHD leveling tool. That's actually not doing a lot of peak reduction at all. It's only picking up just the very, very loudest parts. I try to control dynamics more through the faders than compression. An overly compressed drum kit just doesn't sound good. What this is doing is giving us some extra gain. Turn off everything here. We've also got a limiter. That's where we're picking up any peaks. Everything dry on the drum bus. Individual effects applied, of course. Sounds a bit quiet, a bit amateur, a bit lifeless. Add in the leveling tool. And then the limiter. So the next step is bass. I'm going to keep the drums here for context. Now, bass was all recorded through DI. Okay, here's the bass with the BOD bass overdrive from TSE Audio. This is a SansAmp clone, free. And these settings were copied from my bass player's real SansAmp. So we're running into a tuner, makes no difference on the sound. Into Reaper's built-in noise gate. Only thing I ever change on this is the threshold. It's not doing a lot for me at the moment, but it's cleaning up some of the editing I have to do. Then we've got our first EQ. This is cutting 50 Hertz, boosting 100, cutting 200, boosting 400 and 800, cutting 15, cutting 3K, and a low pass at 4.5K. Next up is our compressor. We've got the Spanky bass preset. Yeah, here's where we're going to get a lot of volume. ADHD leveling tool for some more compression. You'll see this gain is very high. Got the attack pretty high as well. I've got it set as a limiter here, so let's turn that on. That goes into the BOD. which, would you believe, goes into another leveling tool. This one's set as a limiter again. Gain's still very high. The attack's pretty slow. Then we've got another noise gate. This is, again, purely a convenience thing to save time on editing. It also removes any hiss left behind in any spaces from having a fair bit of overdrive and compression going on. Then we have another EQ, again, low shelf at 50, bit of a cut at 200 Hertz, slight boosts at 4 and 8, cuts at 1600, 3200, a low pass at 5K, and also a boost at 5K. Not doing a lot for me at the moment, but that is there for a reason. That was added just to tighten things up a little in the faster sections. And finishing it all off, we've got a limiter with the threshold set down at negative 5.8 decibels. That just brings the overall volume of the whole bass track up, which, you know, it's not very dynamic, but we're playing metal here. Who needs dynamics? In the context of the drums as well, we have let's talk guitars. Just guitars. Not a lot of low-end information, is there? So we'll start with our left guitars and just the one that's panned 100% left. Now, again, everything is DI for this track. We've got a tuner. Now I'm using the Effector silencer from, I hope I'm saying this right, Kawasa. This is a very simple guitar pedal style noise gate. So it won't seem like it's doing much here. We've got the WA Production Combear. This is a fun little free compressor. That's set extremely aggressive, but it'll make sense. Then we're running the TSE Audio TSE 808 version 2, drive all the way down, volume all the way up, and tone in the middle. That gives us a bit of a mid boost. Now we can't talk about one without the other. These are both free from STL Tones. So this is the Ignite Amps NAD-IR dual cab processor, just running the German pair preset. So that's a 421 in the center and a 441 in the center. An ISM 57, both on cabs with vintage 30s, and the Ignite Emissary. We're on the lead channel here. Bright switch is on. Gain is very low. Bass is at about 10 o'clock. Low mids at 11. High mids at 1. And treble down at about 11. Presence is all the way up. Depth is down at about 10 o'clock. See how that sounds. And then we have an 11 band EQ, actually boosting 100 Hertz, cutting 400, cutting 1500. We're cutting a lot of the mids here. Okay, next we have hand 80% left. So these two are identical chains. I always make sure I record separate tracks for both. Just by layering the guitars more and more, we're getting more weight to it. But next up, and at 40% left, possibly the nastiest sounding guitar you'll ever hear. So this is a Joyo ZoMBie. I'll show you how it sounds without any onboard effects here. This is the sound coming out of the amp. Practically inaudible. There's no cabinet. Now this is the Fredman round preset. So this is a vintage 30, SM57 on center, and 421 at 45 degrees. It's very quiet because I don't want it too high in the mix, but let's turn that up. Now for a lot of people that'd be a perfectly usable tone right there. We've got a noise gate, cutting a bit of hiss. Then we're hitting the front end with an EQ. So that's a high pass at 640, slight cut at 1100, and then we're boosting the hell out of the top end. Now this is really an effects guitar. This is no low end, all high end, and just fizz. So we're throwing the leveling tool compressor on there again. 4:1 ratio, 10 millisecond attack, so it's very quick. And this is an EQ I've been trying to use a bit more lately. It's the Tokyo Dawn Labs Variety of Sound Slick EQ on the American setting. Tightens things up. And again, in context of left channel of guitars, so that 40% doesn't add a lot, but it really helps separate from the bass. On the right hand side, again, 100%, 80%, 40%, it's going to look very similar. Tuner, effector silencer, comber, very aggressive comber. TSE 808 is slightly higher with the drive and the tones pushed just a bit towards treble. And we're using the Ignite Amps NRR1. Just to show you how much the comber and the 808 are doing to the amp. I'll show you that left one again. So the 808 is really pushing the front of that amp. We're looking at the same thing for 100% right with the NRR1. Again, we have the bright switch on, shape switch on, volume all the way up at 8, presence 2 o'clock, bit of a cut to treble, boosting the mids, cutting bass a little, and the gain is just at a 3. Add the silencer. Adding the comber compressor. Now that quietens things down a lot. But again, we're looking for very squashed metal guitars here. TSE 808. And then our EQ, which is again doing a lot of cuts in the mids. Just like with the left channel, the right is almost identical. The only difference here, we're using the rhythm channel for the amp. That sounds a little something like this. Because we're running the 808 into the boost on the rhythm channel with the gain very high, the rhythm channel now sounds almost exactly like the lead channel with the gain turned down. And onto the 40% right, we're doing exactly the same moves as on the left. This is an exact copy of the signal chain. Just recorded separately. Just a simple compressor each side, solo left guitars. It's just taming a little bit of dynamics. Again, in context. Lead guitar. Everything else in this song was recorded with an 8-string, tuned EA, EAD, GBE. For lead guitars, I just grabbed a 6-string in standard. Now just listening to the chorus here. The lead guitar was very much used as an effect rather than a true lead guitar. Taking you through how I've set that up. A soloed lead guitar sounds like this. Again, effector silencer, combass squashing the hell out of everything. TSE 808, this time we're going into the Nick Crow Labs 8505. This is essentially the lead channel of a 6505. Gain is cranked, lows are cut, mids are cranked, sweep is at about 1 o'clock, power amp is cranked, and volume is most of the way up. Add IR again. German pair, I just find it sounds good for the guitars I do. Then we've got some mid boosts in the EQ, a little bit of a cut at 5K, cut at 400, and a little boost at 100. And we've got that running into a vocal slapback delay, and room reverb is just no preset, set fairly standard really, not doing much. It sounds like it's in a room. Delay here. Again, not doing much, it's just adding a little bit of flavor. But in context, just adds that little bit of extra sizzle. There's a couple of little bits of something extra going on. Coming into the second verse. I didn't really like that transition. It felt a little sudden. So I went digging around all of the free plugins I've got and looking at, I want to say it was Vemba Surge. I found this pad and decided we would use it. So on its own, without any effects, this is the pad. That was a very Doctor Who sort of swell. Then we've added a ring modulator. U-Phoria set at about 4, so not too aggressive. We've got that pushing the M saturator into the Melder Productions Charm Verb. Their preset names are crazy, but they work. This is the Gamey Crayon. It's got a ridiculously long length. That is a 16-second reverb. And then into the Vox and Go tempo delay, which is tied to the host BPM. And we're doing some tremolo and filter. And that's our verse 2 pad. I've also copied that into just the tail of it, into a couple of sections in the second verse. They reappear at the end of each section. Hear that all together. That pad almost serves as a gong. Okay, choir and strings. So I have two identical choir stems. They are just purely MIDI programmed into Spitfire Labs. Same with the strings, MIDI into Spitfire Labs. All I've done here is stack octaves, effects off. So let's just hear one choir. And one set of strings. And when we double the strings, just adds a bit of extra body. And all together. And we've added dark corridor reverb, cranked the room size all the way up, just to give it the feel of being in a massive hall. And added a limiter just to keep control of those building overtones. Now for my vocal chain, see there's a lot of vocal tracks here. So I've got each group in a folder and each group consists of 3 tracks. Now that's because I recorded with 3 different mics, an SM57 clone, a JTS NX7 and just a cheap Chinese condenser mic. Does the job. So on these tracks, they're very, very basic. We've got an EQ, high pass at 120, bit of a cut at about 826, and a little bit of a cut at 7K. Running the leveling tool, 4:1 ratio, 10 millisecond attack. This is, I believe, just the stock settings. And then Reaper's limiter just to keep everything in control. Dry SM57 sounds like this. Solo the NX7 now. The EQ will be slightly different based on each mic. Leveling tool exactly the same. Limiter exactly the same. Now where we start to see a difference is with the condenser mic. We've added a noise gate to the start. EQ is much different. We've got a high pass at 120. We're boosting 355, cutting 1400, and a low pass at about 3K. Leveling tool, stock, and the limiter is stock again. Now that whole comp all together, this is called comp by the way, because I've comped several takes together. I went for a very Meshuggah feel for this song, and that's a very mechanical, almost robotic performance. It means you don't really want to hear breaths, and it almost needs to feel inhuman. Let's solo the comp now, show you effects disabled and then turned on. Now that sounds weird, saturating the hell out of it. There is a reason, I can assure you. So, go into a noise gate. And we've got a de-esser, the Re-X comp. Again, stock Reaper plugin. Here's where the fun starts. We've got barrier set at 5. It's not really doing much except adding some top end harshness. Turn to the gain down on leveling tool, otherwise it is exactly the same as everywhere else in the vocal chain. EQ, we're doing a low pass at 8800, boosting the hell out of almost 5k, small cut at 2.2, small cut at 600, and high pass at 88. That just smooths out some of that harshness in the top end, and then we slam it all with a limiter. Now we've got all of our vocal tracks and folders running into the one bus, vocals all. Show you that with the effects off and on. Now, could I have done that with the faders? Yes, but I wanted a little bit of flavor on there as well. So we've got the Analog Obsession Lala leveling amplifier. We've cranked the gain. We've turned the peak reduction off. And we've got high pass at 92, slight bump at 500, slight cut at 3.7k, and a low pass at almost 9k. Not doing a lot, but it's doing something. And in context. So all those effects on the comp, all that saturation and distortion really just helps bring the vocals forward. This style of music, every bump in the mids helps. Vocal sends, I'm going to show you the second verse here. Everything starts out as just a duplicate and then bring things up or down to taste. So our vocals all is sending to these 4 tracks. Vocal reverb, panned hard left and hard right, and vocal delay, hard left and hard right. So we'll run this dry.
Humanity peaked, so replace the weak, vengeance we will see.
And in context.
Humanity peaked, so replace the weak, vengeance we will see.
And now in context with the effects. How we've done that in the left and right box reverb, it is just the live vocal reverb, room size 33, and that's just to give us a bit of reverb. Hand out, it's to give the vocal a bit of space. The delays, again, very simple, post BPM on the box and go tempo delay. We've got the dry muted.
Humanity peaked, so replace the weak, vengeance we will seek. Eliminate the leaders.
Now those left and right delays are exactly the same. Again, that just gives everything a bit of space. You don't want anything overpowering anything else. I want to show you my master bus now. Here it is with all the plugins turned off. Sounds okay. It's not very loud. It It doesn't peak. It sounds all right. So let's talk you through what I'm doing here, and I'll start with everything off. So we've got a preset here for the Reaper X Comp. This is the multiband compressor. This is the hardness remover. And again, never just stick with the preset. I've played with this to make sure that it fits what I'm aiming for. You can see I'm going fairly light on the compression on the low end, all the way up to the mids. And then in the highs, I'm starting to compress a lot harder. Still not very hard. It's just little bits here and there for taste. Then we're running a multiband EQ. It says mastering starter, but we have changed everything here drastically. This does have its own saturation coming in as well. We are actually boosting the mids a little bit here at almost 1K. Bit of a dip at 6.5, but another dip at about 90 Hertz, 95, 100-ish. And we're just really trying to tame the low end here. We've run into the leveling tool with peak reduction all the way off, 20:1 ratio, 25 millisecond attack. That brings back a lot of that volume that we lost before, and we're slamming that into a limiter. And we're actually putting that into another limiter. This is the Reaper Master Limiter. It's the most basic little limiter, going for a -3 decibel threshold. And we're going for a limit of -0.1. So we want all the way to 0. Those last three really are the key to getting the mix loud. So again, without those, back you'll find it's the leveling tool that's doing most of the loudness. Now I like to mix into that master chain. I want to know that all my EQ moves, all my little guitar tone things, all the levels, I want to know what that's going to do at the end. Only part we haven't talked about yet is automation. It's where things get fun. I like to try and keep my vocals fairly simple. There's some crossfades here, purely from where I was comping takes, but vocals are fairly simple. Choir and strings I do have set up. Okay, if we start here at the outro, let's just solo this choir and strings here. See, the volume automation starts at mute and we want it to come all the way up to full volume just over the course of that entire outro. So again, everything's playing, but we're not hearing anything. Now it's starting to come up. Around here we get to where it would probably be a really nice volume. But for that outro, I wanted it loud. So we get very loud. At the same time, drum bass, guitars left, guitars right, and bass, everything except lead guitar is fading out. And it's at that same point that we have the choir and the strings at full volume. Everything else is going to be at complete mute. So that sounds like do have another volume trim on the instrument bus. We've got just a drop when we get to just this lead guitar. The whole instrument bus starts to fade out. This could have been done on the lead guitar itself. I believe I programmed this in and then hid it and forgot I put it there. Not mad about it though. And the one other automation here, because we're coming from a chorus where the lead guitar is, I wanted to do a full volume drop and then bring it up about halfway through that first section here in the outro. Which gives us this. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything you'd do differently or if there's anything you want to see. And if you like this video, give it a like, maybe consider subscribing. Till next time.